Sam, it's time for me to introduce you to your new crush.
Go on.
Canadian Club Lemon Crush.
Of course, the taste buds have been screaming for a change.
And Canadian Club Lemon Crush is listening, with its balance of lemony zest and the smooth taste of Canadian Club.
Right now, there are 2,500 six-packs to be won. Scan your can or enter online for a chance, and always drink responsibly.
Canadian Club Lemon Crush. This zesty refreshment is your new crush.
A week ago, in the evening, Nerita Waight was getting ready for a momentous occasion.
Because the following day, in the afternoon, I would be signing as an Assembly member Victoria and, in fact, Australia's first treaty.
Nerita is a Yorta Yorta and Ngarrindjeri woman. She's a member of the First Peoples Assembly of Victoria and treaty co-convener. She's also the CEO of the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service. That night, as she prepared for the day ahead, her phone rang. It was Victoria's Attorney General, ringing to let her know that the government was set to announce new laws that would allow children as young as 14 to be tried in adult courts and face life sentences.
So it is a very unique circumstance in which to be advised that Victoria is going to proceed to lock up children, some for life, when you are looking forward to something that was supposed to be transformative, that was supposed to feel that Victoria was ushering in a new era, and then to be somewhat slapped in the face by rather regressive action, it leaves you reeling, Daniel.
The proposal was rushed in the Cabinet with little warning. Ministers were given just minutes to read it before the meeting began. Only a year ago, Labor promised to raise the age of criminal responsibility. Now, in response to tabloid outcry, it's taking a sharp turn, following Queensland and adopting adult time for adult crime. If it goes ahead, it means more First Nations children would be locked up in Victoria than ever before.
Their lives are on the line. These are children that won't receive any hope of a future. They're going to spend the remainder of their childhood, Daniel, in a prison cell. They're going to spend their early adulthood in a prison cell. And as we know, the more you entrench a child in the criminal legal system, the more often they are likely to be caught up in a cycle of offending.
I'm Daniel James, and you're listening to 7am. Today, Nerita Waight, on how the Premier's new laws could devastate vulnerable kids and what it says about the kind of state Victoria is becoming in a time of treaty. It's Tuesday, November 18. Nerita, thank you so much for joining us. Can you describe exactly what these new youth justice reforms will allow and why you and the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service see them as such a dangerous change?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to note that these so-called reforms were done without consultation with anyone in the sector. This appears to have been dreamed up by a Cabinet sub-working group comprising of the Premier, the Attorney General, the Corrections Minister and the Minister for Police.
I today want to acknowledge, as Premier, that every one of these violent youth crimes has a victim, a family that has had their life disrupted, a person that was shaken, a person who was hurt. And we are all horrified by these violent, brazen youth crimes and the devastating impact they have on its victims.
What they've decided to do is that children aged 14 to 17 years old found guilty of committing aggravated burglary or aggravated carjacking could be sentenced to life in prison. That is literally equivalent to murder.
There are too many victims and not enough consequences. It's why Victoria will introduce adult time for violent crime, where the courts will treat children for these crimes like adults, where jail will be more likely and sentences will be longer.
The government also planned to send children who allegedly commit offences, including aggravated and unaggravated home invasion and carjacking, to the county court rather than the children's court, who are the specialists when it comes to dealing with children.
Currently, in the children's court, 34% of children and young people sentenced for aggravated home invasion or aggravated carjacking, for those offences, 34% go to jail. When those offences are before the county court, the adult court, 97% go to jail.
And this means that children are going to have a very alienating experience within the court. They're going to be seen by a judge who has no idea how to interact with children, no idea about the complexities in which these children are often suffering under, the traumas, the neglect, often by the state, in fact, but also often the fact that these children are very, very young, Daniel. These are not people who are equivalent to an adult making a decision. They have very low executive function. And it's just absolutely horrific that we have decided that deprivation of property is equal to costing someone their life.
So what do these laws mean for the children you represent through your legal service and for the Aboriginal community more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, look, after hearing that news Tuesday night, I went back and looked at our Bulitnaloo clients, and Bulitnaloo is our specific Aboriginal Children's Legal Service. And these reforms, Daniel, will affect 2/3 of our clients, 2/3. This, for us, is really difficult to swallow because when we see these kids, we know that they are young people with disability. They're young people who have been coercively forced to engage in risk-taking and offending behaviours, young people who are and whose families are entrenched in poverty, young people who've often been removed from their family's care before they're 4, and those who've been failed at the state at every step in their lives. They don't have an anchor, Daniel. Often enough, they're being moved from place to place. There's no consistency in their education, no consistency in their supports. There is no stability for them. And that's how they get caught up in these behaviours. And sometimes, you know, Daniel, these aren't people who are actively participating in the crime. Sometimes they're just being coerced to be a lookout, but they will still be charged as if they had done the carjacking themselves or the home invasion. Right now, when this is, in Victoria's history, the first time that we've had such high imprisonment rates of Aboriginal people, we are only going to increase that trend. We're not doing anything to detract from it. There is no investment in early prevention and diversion. There is no investment in alternative responses. All Victoria knows how to do is be cruel and unforgiving and put people in jail cells.
Coming up, how to stop violent crime without locking up more kids.
Sam, it's time for me to introduce you to your new crush.
Go on.
Canadian Club Lemon Crush.
Of course, the taste buds have been screaming for a change.
And Canadian Club Lemon Crush is listening, with its balance of lemony zest and the smooth taste of Canadian Club.
Right now, there are 2,500 six-packs to be won. Scan your can or enter online for a chance, and always drink responsibly.
Canadian Club Lemon Crush. This zesty refreshment is your new crush.
The government says this is about community safety and making sure that there are serious consequences for serious crimes. And it's coming in response to the fact that in Victoria, youth crime is spiking. Crimes committed by children are up by almost 18%. And children are overrepresented in serious and violent crimes like robbery and aggravated burglaries and car theft. So what would a good response to a rise in youth crime look like?
A good response to youth crime is one that is holistic, that takes a rights-based approach rather than a punitive one. So that's prioritising prevention, welfare, addressing the root causes of offending. It means making sure that children have easy access to neuropsychs, to social and emotional wellbeing care, to healthcare. They have access to education. They have access to activities and an ability to create healthy relationships, because these are also children, Daniel, who spent many years cycling through COVID lockdowns and as part of their formative development didn't really develop those healthy relationships or cohesive social networks. And in terms of acknowledging that there is a problem, of course there is, Daniel, and this has happened in other countries. You can see what happened in Scotland many years ago. They were having similar problems, and what they did instead was treat it as a public health issue and input into early prevention and diversion, input into holistic and integrated therapeutic support, because they understood wrapping around a child rather than putting them in a cell and throwing away the key was the answer.
You've played an integral role in negotiating Australia's first treaty. I know it for a fact. What does this announcement say to you about the government's preparedness to work seriously with Aboriginal communities to address the root causes of crime?
Look, for me, it was incredibly difficult to sign that treaty Wednesday night because the state had an opportunity here, Daniel, to act in good faith with the treaty at an earlier point. They could have decided to engage with the sector, to engage with Aboriginal voices and experts, to implement long-term solutions to make sure that we will all be safe. Instead, they chose to contradict early on the principles of the treaty and take their own unforgiving and disastrous path. What I will say is that I would hope that the next First Peoples Assembly, which they'll take their positions on the 1st of May 2026, will utilise all of the powers and functions of all three arms of the Gelling Wall to not only ensure that they are taking our concerns and our key asks to government, but that we are holding them accountable for their poor decision-making.
Given that, can the Aboriginal community have any faith in the government's commitment to treaty when it does something like this at the same time?
Can I say that I think there's a difference between Aboriginal community having faith in their own representatives, utilising the treaty to advocate and create transformational change, as compared to them having faith that the Victorian government will at all times act in accordance with the treaty. If we believe that to be true in any instance, then we wouldn't have created Nyingma Nanyawara as the accountability mechanism. We wouldn't have made sure that we had the ability to represent in Cabinet, to engage with Parliament, to persuade them to engage in the duty to consult, to create these good outcomes.
And finally, Nerita, what do you want Victorians to understand about the kind of state we're becoming if these reforms go ahead?
Yeah, I think to understand the state we're becoming, it's good to take you to a specific example. And the one that comes to mind for me is Lily. So Lily was charged with aggravated burglary and aggravated home invasion. They were charged with these violent offences despite only playing a secondary role, so basically being a lookout, Daniel. She was particularly vulnerable, as many young children have contact with the youth justice system are, for things like we mentioned earlier, disability, mental health, care and protection. Our lawyers were able to strongly advocate for her and to keep her out of youth detention, and the charges were reduced. She then received a sentence which didn't include spending the rest of her life in prison. And holistic legal and social supports were put in place by Balit Nalu, which meant that she was diverted from the criminal legal system. And Lily hasn't had any further contact with the legal system. If Lily was charged under these proposed new laws, her matter will be heard in the county court, not the children's court, not with the experts. She would then have been exposed to an adult jurisdiction which lacks understanding and protective factors for children, and also its sentencing is motivated by punishment, not rehabilitation like it is within the children's court. And she would have undoubtedly been subjected to further harms which come from the imprisonment of children. That instance should show you that we are on the path to not only being cruel and unforgiving, but to ensuring that it is our children who pay for the state's mistakes.
Nerita, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Not a problem, Daniel.
Callum, it's time to introduce you to your new crush.
Go on.
Canadian Club Lemon Crush.
Of course, the taste buds have been screaming for a change.
And Canadian Club Lemon Crush is listening, with its balance of lemony zest and the smooth taste of Canadian Club.
Right now, there are 2,500 six-packs to be won. Scan your can or enter online for a chance. And always drink responsibly.
Canadian Club Lemon Crush. This zesty refreshment is your new crush.
Also in the news, Donald Trump says Republicans should vote to have the Epstein files released to the public. a major reversal of position for the US president. Members of Congress are set to vote this week on whether files related to the convicted sex offender should be published. The president had spent months trying to convince his colleagues not to vote for their release. But as more Republicans look set to break with his order, Trump reversed course, saying it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax. And Susan Lee says she will not lose focus on her role for 1 minute, as polling showed her rating as preferred Prime Minister at just 10%, compared with Anthony Albanese, who was at 40%. In the wake of scrapping net zero, the Liberal Party has received its worst polling since Federation, with One Nation experiencing a surge to a record high of 18%. We'll have a full report on the rise of One Nation and what it means for the country tomorrow. I'm Daniel James, this is 7am. Thanks for listening.
Sam, it's time for me to introduce you to your new crush.
Go on.
Canadian Club Lemon Crush.
Of course, the taste buds have been screaming for a change.
And Canadian Club Lemon Crush is listening, with its balance of lemony zest and the smooth taste of Canadian Club.
Right now, there are 2,500 six-packs to be won. Scan your can or enter online for a chance, and always drink responsibly.
Canadian Club Lemon Crush. This zesty refreshment is your new crush.